Alright, YouTube, we're back, of course, talking some Square Enix. We got a recent financial report from Square Enix covering the first quarter of the current fiscal year, which is April 1st to June 30th. And it's a pretty interesting financial report because if you look at the same quarter last year, the overall game sales are down a lot, billions of yen, tens of millions of dollars, but their profits are actually up. It's also an interesting report to look at because right in the middle of the quarter that we're looking at, which is the month of May, is exactly a year removed from when they announced the restructuring, and we're starting to see maybe the payoff of that because the profits are up. The brutal thing about a cyclical industry like games is that the better you do one year off the back of a big release, the worse you'll look next year when you don't have a comparable whopper to punch up the numbers. Square Enix runs into some of that in its latest financial reports, but its figures are also a more complex and interesting breakdown of how its game dev operations are going, now with a lineup of promising JRPGs poised to get it back to the good part of the cycle. Square Enix breaks its reports into categories, and the one we're interested in is Digital Entertainment, DE, covering HD games, MMO, and games for smart devices / PC browser. Net DE sales for the 3 months quarter ending June 30th were down 11 billion yen compared to last year, which Square Enix attributes to lower sales than the segment had generated the previous year, which saw releases that included 3 Kingdom Hearts catalog titles on Steam. So what's kind of important to talk about when we're looking at the quarter last year versus the quarter this year, because they're down 11 billion yen, which looks bad, and it literally is bad. It's like $74 million, down or whatever. But they had the release of the Kingdom Hearts games coming to Steam, which is, I'm sure, made them a bunch of money. Kingdom Hearts is very, very popular. But putting that aside, too, they had a couple of other things that kind of came out within that quarter, versus the same quarter this year, which is barely anything. The Kingdom Hearts series came to Steam June 13th of last year. We also had Saga Emerald Beyond releasing April of last year, which I believe was the only new game within this time frame, and then the last games that I'm aware of were ports of Octopath Traveler 1 and 2. Specifically, Octopath Traveler 1 coming to PlayStation 4 and PS5, and Octopath Traveler 2 coming to Xbox. And when it comes to this year, there's just not really been a lot for Square Enix in general. We had Rebirth coming to PC in January, which was great. And then you had like Saga Frontier 2 Remastered coming out in March. But in terms of the quarter that we are discussing, we only had Bravely Default come to Switch 2, and then of course Final Fantasy 16 coming to Xbox. And that's literally it so far in 2025 that I'm at least aware of. The next game that's coming out, that would be I kind of classified, I guess, as a new game, would be the Tactics Remaster coming out September 30th, right? So we just not really had a lot this year in general. But the main thing is to look at that time frame, right? The same quarter last year versus this year. And there's 2 big hitters, right? You have Final Fantasy 16, and then you got Kingdom Hearts last year. But you're looking at the entire Kingdom Hearts collection coming to Steam versus just 16, which didn't sell overall well in general, coming to Xbox, which is a platform that doesn't sell JRPG kind of games very well, right? At least historically. And I know we've talked about it a lot over the years, but a lot of that does fall back on Square Enix themselves, because a lot of the franchise in more recent years, and this is still kind of a long ways back, like 13 and 15 came to Xbox, regardless of how well they did. Those games, that trilogy of games, and that Final Fantasy 15 came to Xbox. And then they just decided with 7 Remake, the 7 Remake trilogy, and also 16 to make them PlayStation exclusive. So they kind of pushed away the Xbox audience, and then now that the games aren't doing so well on these exclusive platforms, they're kind of trying to dig into the Xbox fan base again. And I don't blame Xbox players for maybe not wanting to support it. For quite a while now, if you want to play a modern Final Fantasy game, you either had to have a PlayStation console or you had to wait for it to come to PC, which depending on the game can take a long ass time, right? When it comes to FF7 Remake, that took a year and 8 months to come to PC, specifically Epic, and then more than 2 years to come to Steam. When it comes to the Xbox platform, you can maybe argue that it's too little too late, right? They brought 16 to Xbox almost 2 years later, a game that didn't do very well in general on a platform that they've not really tried to build much of an audience on in recent years, and then with Final Fantasy VII Remake, that's come to Xbox at the end of the year, and also Switch 2. But Remake is depending on which version you're talking about, it's a 5 to 6 year old game, right? So it's do Xbox players care? Do they give a shit? Do they really wait this long just to play it on Xbox? There's probably some out there, but a majority of people would have either already bought a PlayStation, a gaming PC of sorts, or they just watch a Let's Play online or something, right? And to be clear, I'm happy this shit's coming to Xbox. I've been talking about this shit on my channel since 2015, that they need to have these games not be exclusive. I've been saying this shit for a decade now, and to hardcore talking about it, I would say probably 2019, 2020, kind of around when Remake was starting to get marketed again and shit. I've been talking about, hey, we need to get this shit on Xbox as well. Even if they don't do great numbers, it's now you're trying to retroactively get an audience on Xbox, and again, it's probably too little too late. Bit of a tangent, let's continue. It's not all bad news though. Square Enix's HD game sector actually generated about 1 billion yen more profit this quarter despite lower sales, thanks to lower development cost amortization, which is a weird ass word, and decreased related advertising expenses. So yeah, again, their overall sales are down a lot, several millions, but they actually made money this quarter. I don't know if that goes to exactly, they say lower development costs. I don't know if that's like the remaster of Saga Frontier 2, or if like the port of 16, I don't know how much money that made, but that would have been a contributing factor. Maybe residual sales of stuff, 7 Rebirth coming to PC. I don't know if that was still selling from April to June, but maybe it was. That's why we're seeing a lot of these like remasters and stuff coming out here lately from Square Enix, like the Dragon Quest stuff, and obviously the upcoming, Final Fantasy Tactics and things like that. I think we had like Bravely Default remasters and shit. Just because they're safe, they're like low development cost, and as long as they make a certain amount of sales, they're gonna make like easy profit off of them, right? And it's something we're seeing a lot of. And we get to something like the 7 Remake games are probably Final Fantasy 16. These are games that are at least probably like $100 million or more to make, maybe even a lot more than that. I don't know exactly. And then you also have to factor in like advertising costs, which can be probably tens of millions more. So you could maybe look to like $150 to $200 million if you're factoring in advertising for games like that. And it's like, how many copies do you need to sell to like make that back, right? And then to also make a profit off of it. It's why we probably won't see a lot of high budget games from Square Enix in the kind of near future, right? We've been told as much by Takashi Kiryu that they want to focus on like their IPs and do quality over quantity, right? We might not have, like a Marvel's Avengers again in the, kind of near future, where it's this very, very high budget game that was obviously at risk and it didn't work out for them. There's still obviously going to be big budget games, more Final Fantasies, Kingdom Hearts, Dragon Quest, things like that, right? They'll definitely still be happening, but there won't be all these like random games that are definite risks. A lot of these games Square Enix has put out there for a long time. It's like you can watch one trailer and be like, what the fuck is that game? That game's going to do terribly, and it did. This cost reduction stands out to me given Square's ongoing plan to shift from quantity to quality with game development amid an aggressive push for multi-platform releases. Making games ain't getting any cheaper, less than amazing games have a harder time cutting through the noise, and leaving money and players on the table with exclusive deals makes less and less sense. Square's reduced overhead does appear to have benefited it this quarter. It's in this space that Square appears optimistic about its remaining 2025 release lineup. Final Fantasy Tactics Remake The Evil East Chronicles launches September 30th, Dragon Quest 1 and 2 HD 2D Remake is due October 30th, Octopath Traveler 0 is coming December 4th, and the Switch 2 and Xbox release of Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade is timed for this winter. There's only one all-new game on that list, and even Octopath Traveler 0 is somewhat based on the series' mobile game, but still a lovely list of JRPGs that I can't wait to tear into. So I can kind of agree with Square Enix that their future lineup looks good, at least from like a profits perspective, because it's mostly just like, remasters, remakes, and ports, right? It's just, Final Fantasy Tactics, Evil East Chronicles, which is just a remaster, sort of remake kind of thing. The HD 2D remakes of Dragon Quest 1 and 2, and then ports of FF7 Remake Intergrade to Switch 2 and Xbox. And like all of that shouldn't be that expensive to do, right? I don't know how much the ports themselves are going to, sell for like 7 Remake and shit. We'll see mostly how it performs, I guess, on like Switch 2. But when it comes to like Dragon Quest 1 and 2 and like the Evil East Chronicles, like those are going to do probably pretty well because they weren't overall that expensive to make, I would assume, compared to like other games, right? And then we do, of course, have Octopath Traveler 0, which does seem to be pretty exciting for a lot of people in the community, which is great. We do have like at least a new game on the horizon, right? It has aspects again of like the mobile game. I think there's like the base building type shit or something in the mobile game. I haven't looked super into it, but something along those lines, right? There's aspects that we've seen before with the franchise, but it's still a new game. For Octopath Traveler, which is a very like popular franchise. It's not one that I've delved into just yet. I will say though, for me personally, as a Square Enix fan, the lineup in the near future, the rest of the year, isn't super exciting. Like I'm looking forward to the Tactics remaster. It's Final Fantasy Tactics. I played a decent amount in my life, but it's like a new spin on the game, so I'm at least excited. And it's been a long time since I played it anyway, so like there's at least that. The Dragon Quest stuff, like that's cool for people that are into Dragon Quest. I'm looking forward to Dragon Quest 12 more so. I don't really have any attachment to Dragon Quest 1, 2, and 3 and stuff like that, right? That's not like the generation I grew up playing. It's came into the franchise very late with Dragon Quest 8. I'll maybe get around to play them at some point in my life, I'm sure. It's kind of the same thing with like the Pixel remasters. Like I've played a little bit of the older Final Fantasy games, but not much. They're not games that I have any kind of attachment to. I'll probably have played those at some point, the Pixel remasters, but it's just, I don't go back and play like older Final Fantasy games. It's just not really my thing, right? I'm looking forward to like the here and the now and the future. Then obviously when it comes to the port of FF7 Remake, like I'm not going to buy it for Xbox. I don't own a Switch 2, so like I have no interest in that. And then that's really it, right? Outside of, a 9 Remake, a surprise 9 Remake, reveal or announcement. And even if that was announced at some point this year, there's no guarantee it's coming out this year, right? So like just as of right now for what's coming out within the rest of the year for Square Enix, like it's not super interesting to me. Plenty of people would disagree with me on that, and that's perfectly fine, right? It's just one guy's opinion. From what I look for from Square Enix, I don't really vibe with what's coming out in the rest of the year, at least as of right now that we're aware of. But yeah, kind of chilled you are on the video. Square Enix's overall game sales this last quarter were down a lot compared to the same time last year, right? Like 11 billion yen, 70 something $million, right? But the profits are actually up just because of like the kind of games they're putting out, low cost, low advertisement. Really a lot of factors for why that is the case, right? In terms of like there not being a lot of game sales, is because there's just not been a big release since Rebirth last year, right? And it's something I'm personally waiting on. I'm interested in like smaller projects from Square Enix, depending on what they are, depending on what kind of remaster it is of a game that I might enjoy, right? Like Parasite Eve, for example, Remake, Remaster, whatever. But also, like, I'm waiting on the next big release. The Kingdom Hearts 4, the Dragon Quest 12, the next Nier, FF7 Remake Part 3, Final Fantasy 17. That's probably still years away at this point, but still, I'm looking for that kind of shit from Square Enix for the most part. But of course, pass off to you guys. What are your thoughts with Square Enix's lineup for the rest of 2025 that we are aware of? They could also, not even just the 9 remake, there could be other games that they announce at some point, right? Killer Eden came out of nowhere. Goddamn. I'm going to show that game every time I get an opportunity to. Are you satisfied with the current lineup that we have for the rest of the year, or are you still looking forward to the next big game from Square Enix? Either way, that's the video. Subscribe to if you guys are new, search in the description below. Follow me on Twitter, dashingdavidbusiness. That's it. Bye.
Used to care what people thought, but now I care more, and nobody out here's got it figured out. So therefore, I've lost all hope of a happy ending, depending on whether or not it's worth it. So insecure, no one's perfect. We spend it with no shame. We blow that like Coltrane. We in here like Logain or leave it like Cobain.